Okay. I believe this recording has started. Thank y'all for joining me during this time. I just wanted to make something that would help people out who have questions about training the Food Science CDE. Just wanted to address some of the questions I've gotten over the past few weeks about it. I've tried to answer people's questions on it, but I knew that for the amount of calls I've been getting, there's probably more people who want to know more about how to train the CDE. And so I just thought I would put this together to offer my insight. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through a brief overview of the contest, just the components of the CDE, try to explain what those things look like. We're going to go through the product development scenario, discuss what that is, and the tasks that have to be accomplished during that activity. And we'll talk a little bit about how you can split the task up among the team members. And then we'll go through some recommended resources and then just some ways to train for the other practicums. And then finally at 4:15, I got in touch with Mr. Schimmels, who's the superintendent of the CDE. He's an ag teacher from Nebraska. He's going to join us around 4:15, and we'll dedicate 4:15 to 4:30 to be a Q&A session. You can ask him some questions about how he plans to have some things set up for this year's event. So we're going to start with a brief overview of the CDE. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. We're going to go to the FFA website, look at the rules, and go from there. Okay, you should see my screen. This is the Food Science and Technology page of our website. Mr. Schimmels in 2018 took on the role of being the superintendent of this CDE. He's helped us out with it. This will be his 6th year in setting up a Louisiana event. He even did an event in 2020. And they've all been really good. I think he's gotten a lot of interest from several different teachers in our state. He's really helped put into a lot of teachers' minds what the Food Science CDE has the capabilities of doing. But he made these 2 videos last in 2018. This was before he ever even put a contest together for us. And these are on our website for you to refer to. They're on the Louisiana FFA YouTube page if you prefer to reach it that way instead of through the web page. It's really good information. Those videos are long. However, it's solid information. If you're going to train a team and you've not watched these videos, in addition to being part of this webinar, take a look at these videos as well, especially on the product development. He goes into some really good detail about some of the packaging laws and things to consider whenever your team is making the parts for that activity. Let's just go to the contest rules. And there's a few things I want to address specific to this year, but just some basics about it. This is a 4-person team. You can have a blue and gold team, and because this is a state convention CDE, members do have to wear official FFA dress. One thing I will point out is if you have any students participating that have an allergy, some type of food allergy, the best way to let the state office know about that is through the judging card registration. There's an accommodations registration tab that you can put for students who have any type of accommodation, whether it's an allergy, whether it's educational disability, or a health issue that you need to make the state office aware of. It's going to be the best way to relay that information to us. And so there are, this is a really neat CDE. It's different than a lot of the other ones that we do. One thing that I like about it that I think makes it special is that there's a product development project where all 4 team members work together apart from the individual practicums. And so we're going to go into depth about how that activity works, along with discussing what the other practicums of this contest are. So Dr. Smith, in his Sunday update, shared what the product development scenario information was going to be for this year. So that's something that you may want to refer to with your teams, just so that they would know what type of product that they are expecting to do for this year's contest. So this year, the category is snacks, the platform is refrigerated, and the market is retail. Platform would just be like, how is this food going to be in the store? And so this one's going to be a refrigerated snack that's going to be for retail sale. We'll talk a little bit about differences between retail sale, wholesale, and things of that nature. But there's a product development scenario where all 4 students will work together. They're going to be given some information. That information needs to be referred to and taken into account to accomplish a few different tasks. We'll go more into detail about what those tasks are. They get 60 minutes to do that activity. So it's something that it is definitely attainable within 60 minutes, but students need to make sure that they're using their time efficiently and that all 4 teammates are working together to be sure that this gets done in that time period. Okay. I want to address this where it says the superintendent will decide whether to have a presentation or a written response question. I'll let Mr. Schemmels clarify that, but in the past 5 events, he has always done the response questions. And it has always been 10 questions that the students have to respond to just in written form. That counts for 100 points of that scenario. The whole team scenario counts for 400 points. So the questions make up 25% of the point value. They've always been the written questions. And so I don't expect that to change this year. These are some example categories that have been used in the past. Cereal, snacks, meals, beverages, condiments, desserts. This year, as we discussed, it was going to be snacks. The platform, you can see some of the other possible ones, like if you're practicing with some past year scenarios, or if you go to the national website and look at some things, you might see different platforms, but these are the possible ones that can be pulled from. This year is going to be refrigerated. And then for market, these are your markets, and it's retail sale for this year. These are examples of some of those combinations. Okay. So let's go into the individual activities and discuss what those look like. And then I'll take time if anybody's got any questions about these rules, but if nobody does, then we'll go straight into the product development and what that looks like. And we'll talk about how the math portion of that works, how to delegate some tasks. Written exam this year, 2023 is considered an odd year. That means that from the Principles of Food Science 4th edition, we will use chapters 1 through 12 as the reference. This is another way that this CDE differs in that we don't use past 5 years of national exams. The national superintendent and their team usually makes a very original exam. So in other words, you can't take questions from last year's test and compare them to a test that was made 2 or 3 years ago and see very many similarities. So it was recommended to us when we had the opportunity to make a revision to just update the textbook, but to keep a textbook as the resource. We'll talk more about how to approach that. It's a 50-question multiple choice exam. According to the rules, they get 60 minutes. Each question will be worth 2 points. And so this counts for 100 points. Now let's go into some of these other practicums. Now there are 2 practicums that are related to food safety, and there are 2 practicums that are related to food sensory evaluation. So let's talk about customer inquiry first. Customer inquiry is set up in a format where there's usually 5 scenarios that depict a customer submitting a complaint about a food product. And so the student has to analyze, is this a quality issue or is this a safety issue in this product? And then from there, is this a biological concern, a chemical concern, or a physical concern? And the other one related to food safety is they'll have to evaluate some situations, maybe in food handling or food processing. They have a list of violations that they can search out, that if they identify a problem in that picture, they have to link that to one of the violations on the reference page. Okay, we'll look at some examples of those soon. In the sensory evaluation, the two parts of that are triangle testing and aroma identification. Triangle testing, what that is, it's just a way of comparing food products that are similar in nature. And a triangle test, it signifies there's going to be 3 samples within that test. And so there will be 3 triangle tests. So 3 samples of 3. Each one of those is worth 5 points. And so, triangle test 1 will have 3 samples. Test 2 will have 3 samples. Test 3 will have 3 samples. Those triangle tests are going to be 3 different samples of a similar type product, but one of those samples is going to be different from the other 2. Example of this, let's say we're comparing beverages. Let's say there's 3 samples of cola. There may be 1 Coca-Cola and 2 off-brand colas. There could be 2 diet colas, 1 regular cola. So they can be formulation differences or they can be brand differences. Formulation being like a diet or fat-free, reduced fat, reduced salt, sugar-free, things of that nature. The aromas, this is the list of aromas. It's the same exact aromas that they use in the national CDE. And so there will be 10 samples of aromas that students will identify. They have the reference sheet that they can refer to, and they just will record the reference number in that sample blank on the bubble sheet. Take a look at the bubble sheet in just a second. So this is the point breakdown of everything. Make sure that when you're training that you go over this with your students. That way they have a better understanding of the weight that each part of this contest carries. So in the individual practicums, the one that carries the most weight is the written exam. The single portion of this contest that carries the most weight is the team activity, the product development project. Okay. So that's the parts of the event. Does anybody have any questions about these guidelines? Okay. Want to go ahead and show y'all what the textbook looks like. If you're searching for that textbook, it's Principles of Food Science, 4th edition by Janet Ward. I don't think that they make new 4th editions anymore. I think they've moved on to a new edition. I have never looked at an older edition, like a 2nd or 3rd edition. You can obviously find those used much cheaper. It could be similar enough that it would be an acceptable resource. Please don't quote me on that, but it just may be something to consider. And be the same author, it's just probably some updated information. I would be careful about doing something like that, though. If you can get the 4th edition, try to get it. You may not be able to buy it new, but you may be able to buy it used through Amazon, eBay, or some other used bookstore. There are some resources out there that they make to accompany this textbook. They used to sell like a workbook, and you may have some of those in your department if food science has ever been taught in any kind of capacity, or if you don't teach food science, but maybe somebody else in your school does. maybe something that you can ask those people about. They may have that workbook. It could be a good resource. They also used to sell a CD that had some pre-made exam material through NASCO. That CD was very expensive. I actually was able to get it. It was about $250, the best I remember. It had some good information in it. I don't think it's enough as a standalone study resource. So anyways, we'll talk more about how to address the stuff in that textbook later on. If nobody has any questions that they want to ask before we go into the product development, we'll move straight into that. Okay. If you think of something, you need to ask it. Feel free to, just try to catch me at a time whenever I'm not going through something, and I'll try to answer the question right then. So let's talk a little bit about what this is, what this looks like. I'm going to share my screen again. And I want to go to a link or to a drive that Mr. Schimmels has shared with us. I'm going to actually share this link with all of you. And then we'll share it through the listserv to anybody that didn't join this. Mr. Schimmels has kept the records of all the past contests since 2018, whenever he started helping us out. And he decided that he wanted this information to be accessible to everybody. So we're going to kind of use some of these to refer to. But I want to open up 2018, and I want to look at the product development scenario from 2018. I think it's a really good, simple one to start with. And so we're going to highlight some things in the scenario, and then we're going to move into the worksheet. I'm going to also show you some examples of some teams I've had in the past and how they organize their paperwork from the contest. And so we'll use that as some guidance to maybe help you have some ideas of how to split these tasks up among your students on that team. So let's go to 2018 product development. I'm going to start with the scenario. Are y'all able to see what I'm sharing? Okay, I'm gonna take that as a yes. So this was the scenario from 2018, and so there is very plainly spelled out the task, the main thing that needs to be addressed from this information. Using the ingredients listed and the nutrition information, design a snack pack for kids 9 to 12 years old. So that kind of puts you, it gives you the idea of what are you creating, what type of ingredients are you dealing with, and what market are you trying to reach. And so there's some technical information shared in here about the daily protein recommendation for people in that age range. That's some useful information to consider. And then further down, it's basically saying that this is a company that wants to mimic a P3 protein pack. You probably have seen those in convenience stores before. And so it tells you what you need to do. It says you will need to choose 2 protein-based ingredients and 1 other ingredient from the spreadsheet. You will use 18 grams for one of your ingredients, 19 grams for one of your ingredients, and 20 grams for one ingredient for a total serving size of 57 grams. Your package should contain 1 serving. And then it tells where these products will be sold at. So that's something that students need to look into. They need to know how many servings are they creating and how much is a serving. So this pretty well tells you. This also tells you that this particular scenario only required 3 ingredients. Okay. Let's go a little bit further down. It shows the image of what a P3 protein pack looks like, and then it outlines the 4 tasks. What are the things that this team needs to produce in 60 minutes? So they have to do a principal display panel. They have to do a sketch of where the information panel would be. We'll talk about what those things are. Design an information panel. that includes nutrition facts and all the other legally required information, and then finally answer the questions at the end of this document. These are the questions. There are 10 of them. I don't know if the questions have always been the same, but I know they've always been similar. And so it's information about what are some safety issues associated with your selections? What are some quality issues? The difference between those two things is if it's anything that could harm you, foreign objects, chemical exposure, something biological like some kind of contamination that would cause food poisoning, anything that would cause injury or illness is considered a safety issue. A quality issue has to do with freshness or with appearance. So, example like stale bread is not a safety issue, it's rather a quality issue. It just doesn't taste as good, or maybe something that is misshapen or discolored. If it's not a danger safety-wise, then it's considered a quality issue. So students need to have an understanding of what those two things are and have a little bit of knowledge about food processing. One good way to learn more about food processing is to I've had teams sit down before, go to YouTube, and then just type in, they would search how it's made videos and then think of different food products. It gives them some insight to just see how does food processing look in different situations. It's going to look different with a refrigerated product versus a shelf-stable product. Those are things to consider. Also, packaging. How would you package a product? They need to kind of have an understanding of, well, what kind of packaging does cereal come in versus what type of packaging does a beverage come in? And those are two completely different products in two completely different types of packages. They also need to have some understanding about the target market. Target market was outlined in the scenario. It was children 9 to 12 years of age. How will this product be distributed? They need to have some knowledge about how food leaves the processing plant and ends up into stores and into consumers' hands. It just takes a little bit of studying. So it's not just about making the product, but it's the whole system of food production that needs to be considered and gone over with practice. So some of these, I'm not going to go through each one of these questions for the sake of time, but it does provide you some insight about what type of things do students need to know whenever they are studying for this event. So this is the scenario. Let's take a look at the rubric. This rubric has remained the same since Mr. Schimmels has been helping us, and it addresses all four components: the principal display panel, the sketch, the information panel, and finally the questions, and has point values for certain components of each one of those four things. This is the spreadsheet. I'm going to try to zoom in to where everybody can see that a little bit better. This is the spreadsheet of ingredients that these students had the chance to choose from in this scenario. So remember, it said that they need to choose 3 ingredients. It said that 2 of those had to be proteins and 1 of those could just be another ingredient. Okay. It said that 1 of those had to be 18 grams, 1 had to be 19, the other one had to be 20. So you had some freedom of which one to choose. So people have got some chances to have some creativity here. Basically, the way this works is everything is outlined with all these different nutritional components, and it expresses the values per gram. Okay. So, the simple way of doing that is to take the number of grams of that ingredient used, and then you need to find out how many total calories come from just that one ingredient. How many grams of total fat come from that one ingredient, and all of these all the way down the line. So, for example, let's say we want to choose ham chunks as one of our ingredients. And let's say that we want it to do 18 grams of ham chunks. Well, to find the number of calories that come from that ingredient, you would do 18 times 1.07 calories per gram. That'd give you, the information you need to know to find out how many calories come from this one ingredient. And then you just do that for each ingredient, and you add those totals together. Okay. What I'm going to try to do is swap from this. I'm going to try to swap to my other. I've got a document camera set up. I want to try to do a little bit of writing. We're going to see if this works. If it doesn't, I'll have to swap to different means of what I'm about to try to do. Okay. I had some issues with my stuff swapping over. So this is a sheet of what we just looked at. I'm trying to get this to where everybody can see it a little bit better. If this doesn't work, then we'll swap back to the screen, and I'll have to try to explain it a little bit different way. But like, if your students were working through this scenario, they would need to just kind of try to look at the scenario and identify their ingredients first. It's going to be the first thing they need to do. So for this example, I want to choose, I want to do ham chunks, and then I want to do another protein. So a good way for students to figure out, like, is this a protein, is just to look at the protein value over here in this column. May not be able to tell much about it, but that's just something that they need to look for. So for this, I'm going to choose ham chunks. I'm going to choose apple slices as the non-protein. And then finally, I'm going to choose cheddar cheese cubes, because that does have protein in it. So that's going to be the three that I'm going to work with off of this. I'm going to actually swap back to my shared screen. I think that's just going to work a little bit better. I apologize for these issues. You're still able to hear me? My stuff is frozen up, and I'm not able to really see what's happening in real time. So, are y'all able to hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I had to reset my computer before I started this, and apparently it just didn't fix the problem. Are y'all able to see the screen that I was looking at earlier that shows the spreadsheet of ingredients?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So let's just say the three that I chose were ham chunks, cheddar cheese cubes, and apple slices. Okay, let's work off of ham chunks just for a minute. So let's say I want to use 18 grams of ham chunks. The way that students would do the math operations for this is they would just say, okay, I need to figure out how many calories this ingredient has. So they would do 18 grams of that ingredient. We're going to start with calories, 18 times 1.07. That gives you 19.26. Okay. They need to record that information. They need to have a just an organized layout, something similar to this. Once they choose their three ingredients, all they're having to do for this scenario is just find the nutritional information for those ingredients and then add all that stuff together. That's their nutrition information. Okay. And then they would move on to total fat. 18 grams times 0.0357. That gives you 0.6426 grams. That's less than 1 gram of total fat just from the ham chunks. But they need to keep everything when they're doing all this. Just keep everything in the form that it comes. And whenever you're doing the calculations, don't round numbers. Don't do that until the very end. Whenever you're putting it on the information panel. Okay, let's take some time. Does everybody kind of understand how the math operations work for this? It's going to be the same principle. It's going to always depend on what ingredients are being chosen and how many ingredients it's going to require. So if it requires 7 ingredients for the scenario, you would just choose 7 ingredients, but you'd go down the line, and the best way is to figure out how many calories come from each ingredient, how many grams of total fat come from each ingredient, how many grams of saturated fat come from each ingredient. And that's the way that you figure it out. So as you can imagine, it's a lot of math operations, but it's not complex operations. Okay. But does everybody kind of get a good understanding of how the math works?
Yes.
Okay. Good deal. So I'm just going to kind of leave it at that, and I want to go into more about what these parts of the label are. So let's talk a little bit about what a principal display panel is. The PDP, the principal display panel, it's just the front of the package. What does the front of the package look like? What kind of information is on the front of the package? So because I've been having problems with my camera, I just want to pull up another web page, and we're just going to look at a PDP. Let's just do it like this. Talk about the components of a principal display panel. See if we can find a good example to zoom in on. It's a pretty good one. Maybe everybody can see this cornflakes box. Like I said, if my camera was working right, I'd just hold a box up and show it to you. I don't want to risk not being able to show you that through the camera because it's just not working right. this entire front package is the principal display panel, and there are some components. And if you want to learn more about this in detail, watch Mr. Schimmel's videos. But oftentimes the requirements is that you have to have a product name, and then you have to have a statement of identity. So the difference between those two things, the product name can be something kind of catchy, you know. We'll use Oreos, for example. We know what Oreos are, but maybe to somebody in a foreign country, or maybe to just a consumer who's never seen that before, they don't know what an Oreo is until they see it. But they have to, just by law, there's a required thing called statement of identity that has to be on the front panel that just explains what it is. We'll use cornflakes as an example. It's just a corn cereal. The base of cornflakes is corn. Okay, it's a pretty simple one. Oreos are a little bit different. An example statement of identity for Oreos is going to be a chocolate cookie with cream filling. And explains what an Oreo is. Cheerios. What's a Cheerio? I mean, is it a British greeting, or is it a food product? And so on a Cheerios box, there's a statement of identity on it that says toasted oats cereal, or something along those lines. It just explains what the product is. So those are things that have to be on there. You have to have a product name, you have to have a statement of identity, and you have to have a quantity. So for anything besides a fluid has to be in volume. You know, when you buy a gallon of milk, it doesn't say how much it weighs. It says that it's 1 gallon. It's 128 ounces. It probably also lists the milliliters, because it has to be in metric unit and imperial unit. So students need to know how to convert between the two. There's 28.3495 grams in an ounce. That's a number I recommend your students to memorize, or at least somebody on that team needs to know that when they're doing product development. So it has to be expressed in ounces and in grams. And so a lot of times too, you're going to have other things. You have a brand name. Brand name of this is Kellogg's. Something I've done before. Do something creative. Maybe use your school name. Maybe use your school mascot, and do something creative with that. I mean, we see this on food products all the time. We have mascots on our food products, catchy brand names, things of that nature. Be creative with it. Mr. Sebring, y'all are the Chiefs up at West Ouachita. Maybe incorporate that somehow into the brand name of the food product. I don't know what everybody else's mascots are, but that's something I've done in the past. I've seen some teams at nationals do that as well. Okay. So that is a PDP, and that's just a really good example of that. When we go back to the scenario, and it talks about the information panel. The information panel is going to be on the side, and it includes your nutritional information, your allergens, and things of that nature. Let's look at an example of a information panel. Talk about those components of that. This is a pretty good resource, and it even goes through some of the PDP stuff as well. Information panel is going to look different on different types of food products. On a chip bag, it's going to look different than what it would look like on a box. Let's take a look at this. And so this is the nutrition facts. And expresses all the stuff your students would have this outline, and so they just have to fill in the information from the ingredients list about the total calories per serving. So all this is going to be in a per serving form. It says it right here. So if you have 6 servings in your box, you don't take the total number of calories from one serving and multiply it. You just put this in a per serving form on a nutrition facts label. The nutrition facts and then the ingredients is another component of the information panel. Then finally, the other 2 parts are the allergens and the manufacturing information. I don't have a good example of one that I'm able to pull up. All it's showing me is the nutrition label. I wanted to show y'all everything. But if you look at any kind of box, a cereal box, here's an example of, this is a little bit different type of label. And so depending on the product they're making, their label's going to look a little bit different, but it lists the ingredients, and the way that ingredients are listed, they're listed from the most in weight to the least in weight. It also is going to have an allergen statement. You know, what are the food allergens? And then the distribution information. The distributor information can be made up. Maybe use your school address for that. And really all it lists right here is the name of the company and then the city, state, and zip code. It may just be something good to practice with your teams. Okay. I feel like I've went through a lot of stuff and maybe not went as deep as I needed to on other parts of it. But I just wanted to be sure everybody understood what those components were that they were asking for. Okay. So like I said, I'm going to share this with all of you first, and then we'll put it on the listserv for other people. And then it'll be posted to our website at some point. Ms. Shambles just wanted this for everybody. Okay. Any questions about anything with product development I didn't go into? I know I didn't go into much.
Mr. Aaron, can I interject a couple of things?
Yes, absolutely.
So the big things I see is people just forgetting. So on the principal display panel, forgetting either, you know, they have to do the net weight, and it has to be in U.S. customary and in metric, and forgetting a lot of times they'll put a nice they'll put a nice PDP together where they use the marketing space, and then they'll forget the statement of identity. And the statement of identity is really important, and it's important to get the statement of identity has to be, by law, has to be half the size of the largest print on the box. So there will be rulers for your teams to make sure that they can do those kind of things and check that. On the information panel, there are 4 things that have to be on there. Nutrition facts. There will be 1 page in the scenario that'll have nutrition facts on it. At the top, it'll say an information page or information panel, and they can do everything on there. So the nutrition facts, you don't have to memorize. The format will give that to you. But right underneath the nutrition facts needs to be ingredients, just like Aaron said, it needs to be descending order by weight. Then right underneath that needs to be allergens, contains with, if you're going to put, if there's a fish product, or it needs to be what kind of fish it is. If there's nuts in it, you don't say tree nuts, you say coconut, or you say almond, or whatever the tree nut is. And then lastly is, and he's completely right, make up an address, just whatever the address, whatever you can have fun with your product name. And anyway, just make sure all those components are on there. I guess I see teams lose big chunks of points because they don't have the major components. On the principal display panel, I teach my students that there are 3 things that go on that PDP. Your statement of identity, your net weight, the law says you have to do that. then everything else is marketing. And there's a PowerPoint on the website that goes through, it talks about what the law says on those. On the information panel, there are 4 things, and just make sure that they get them on there. Some minor points, like we don't do percentages for proteins. We don't do units. We do only percentages for things like the vitamins and minerals. So if your kids put the units on there, like grams or international units for vitamin A or whatever, and put the units and the percentage, they'll lose a few points. We don't lose very much for that kind of a thing. That was one thing I've noticed over the years. The really good teams are going to have all the different components, and they're going to pay attention to the minor things.
Yeah, thank you for that, Mr. Schimmels. And I don't know how long you've been in here. I had my screen minimized when I was sharing, but I've had problems with my camera. I had some other things I was going to show to everybody. My camera my stuff has kind of been lagging behind. I don't know what's going on with it. I thought I had everything squared away at work this morning. So I haven't been able to show everything that I wanted to. I do want to address how to get the percentages real quick. I'm going to try to share my screen again and go back to that scenario we were looking at, 2018. That's just a good simple one to start with. These seem to get a little bit more complex as you go throughout the year. So I would start fresh with 2018. It's just a simple, good, straightforward one to do. But looking at the spreadsheet of these ingredients, you're trying to get your percentages of those different components. Like when you look at a nutrition label, it tells you the grams of total fat, but it also expresses that in a percent. It does the same thing with some of these other components like vitamin D, calcium, your vitamins and minerals. The way that students would get that percentage is they're going to figure out the total number of grams or all these other units, micrograms in the case of vitamin D, and then milligrams in cases like calcium. And so what they'll do is they'll figure out the total number. We'll start with total fat. If there's 20 grams of total fat per serving, to get your percent daily value, you would do the number of grams of total fat that's in a serving, and you'll divide it by the recommended value to get your percentage. So you would do 20 divided by 65 grams, and you're going to get a decimal. And so you would just move your decimal place over, and that's going to be your percentage.
And go to the nearest whole. Just go to the nearest whole. If your kids are usually within, if they're within 2%, that's pretty doggone close, because they're going to have to do all these hand calculations. So just round to the nearest whole. I'm not gonna punish them for close. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So if they get something like 34.7, just round it to 35%.
Right. And if they round it to 34, I'm okay with that too. They're right there. And so you know how to do this part of it. Once you get your weights over there, whatever the products that you choose, you're going to get the weights from that. And then you're going to take that weight, it'll be in grams, times the per gram ingredient. So that kilocalories that he's showing there, you're going to take your weight times the calories and then add that column down to the bottom. And that's where you're going to get your total calories from. And then same thing with fat. You would take, I think there were 3 ingredients is what we asked for in this product development. And you're going to take, I don't know, Aaron, can you move over so we can see you just slide it over to the left so we can see the ingredients? Nope.
Yeah.
So let's say you took ham chunks and you were going to use uh, about, let's see, 28 grams of ham chunks. Then you would take that 28 grams times that 1.07. I think that's the right number. And then if you were doing American cheese cubes to go with that, and you're doing 28 grams of that, then you would say take that 28 grams times 1.48, and then let's say you did yogurt covered raisins, you take that times so 28, 20, oh, maybe too much. Hang on just a minute. Sorry about that. So you would take whatever the number of grams that you're using. So in this case, the total grams have to add up to 57. You would pick three items, and whatever combination of number of grams for each item, it just has to add up to 57. But then you're going to take the number of grams for that item times the calories per gram, and then add that down to the bottom, and you will get your total grams. Then you would take the number of grams for your ham chunks, take it times the 0.0357 for total fat, and then you do that for each one of them, and then you add down. And once you get to the bottom, then he's right. So you would take so I don't know, whatever that you might end up, looks like that would be fairly close, probably. So if you had 20 grams or 19 grams of total fat, then you would divide that by 65 times 100, round to the nearest. And then on that information panel, you would write 19 grams of fat, and it would be whatever 19 divided by 65 is. Was that about a third? So you'd be 30% or what. They need to have the accurate numbers, but that's how you do that part of the math. And I will put it, if you go looking around at other states, they put it in per 100 grams, because that's how the FDA and USDA list these things. But I will put it in the per gram basis for you. So your kids, I'm taking one math step away they don't have to do. They don't have to convert from per 100 grams. They just have to take their grams times the per gram units. I hope that makes sense for everybody.
Yeah, we had kind of went through the process for that, I think, before you had got on, about figuring out how many ingredients to use, and then going down the line to figure out number of calories for each one of the components, and then adding them up. So
sure. Sorry, I didn't mean to. That's just another place that I see sometimes, but sorry, I didn't mean to go back over something you've already done.
So let's move off of product development and just discuss these other practicums a little bit. And I'll tell you, if just for the sake of time, it may be better, Mr. Shimmels, if you just want to talk about the triangle testing, the aromas, the food safety picture violation, and the customer inquiry. If I just pull some of that stuff up from one of these years, if you'll just kind of talk through it and try to advise people how to train for that component. We've already talked a little bit about like what those parts are, and how many samples they'll see, and everything. We kind of did that in the very beginning, but didn't really go into any training methods. So if you'd like to, I'll pull some of that stuff up, and you can kind of guide people through it.
I'll be happy to help whatever I can. Wherever you want to start would be great.
That may help answer some people's questions that they may have, and I kind of wanted to end it around 4:30. If we need to go over a little bit, I'm okay with that, but I want to respect everybody's time. Which one? Let's start with customer inquiry letters.
Okay, so there is a place, and there's a website. Oh Consumer Reports Food. If you Google Consumer Reports Food, you'll find this website, and you can go in there and you can pull as much as you want, and you can go find things. So we're gonna identify things as either. So this is where I get practice materials from, is that website. I also go find things for the state contest for that website. I mean, there's hundreds and thousands of these letters. There's two main categories. There's quality and there's safety. Safety is going to harm you. Quality, may not taste good, but it's not going to be a problem. Two big words that people get confused with: rancid. Rancid is not dangerous. When you see people talking about rancid or rancidity, that's lipid oxidation. That is stale potato chips. Stale potato chips are rancid. They're not dangerous at all. That's a quality issue. On the flip side, putrid, when you see people using the word putrid, a lot of times that will be a safety issue. So there's two things. When we get into things like this particular one, there's a sharp piece. That's a choke hazard. That's a puncture hazard that might cause a real problem and get someone hurt. So in this case, this is a safety and a physical. When you get into things like the rancid potato chips, if they had rancid potato chips, that would be a quality and chemical. I will do my very best to avoid there, and Mr. Bavers will know what I'm talking about. There are a lot of quality issues that are kind of in between things, and I will do my best to avoid things that aren't pretty clear cut. If your kids know how to identify these things, we're seeing more and more kids get great scores on this, and so I want everybody's kids to get this and understand it. But you're going to identify them by quality or safety first. You get 2 points for that, and then chemical, physical, or biological, and you get 3 points for that. And there's 5 years worth of these in there. You can also go to the national website and you can find those also. A lot of times I have a good working relationship with the Nebraska superintendent, and so a lot of times before our Louisiana state contest, I'll send them to her and have her make sure that they're clear cut also, so that I get somebody to backstop me on it. Any questions about customer inquiry? It is Consumer Affairs Food Product. If you Google that, there's a huge website. It'll just take you through hundreds or thousands of them. And that's where I go. I just go pull them off and run them by my team.
Okay, so y'all can look through these whenever I share this file with you, and like you said, there's 5 years worth of them. There's a written description. Oftentimes there's a picture as well. I'll also send y'all a resource I've used before about how to determine if it's a quality or safety issue, and then determining the difference between biological, chemical, and physical. I'll share a link of that with y'all as well. Let's go to safety picks, and what I want to do, I want to pull up where you would find the safety problems list that we use. So, Ms. Schimmels, if you just want to explain kind of like what you've done in the past with this, like if there's multiple violations in a picture,
Okay.
Could you just explain to everybody how you tend to do that?
So some pictures will be only one violation, and you'll have to come up with that number. But if there are multiple violations, your kid only has to write one of them to get full credit. Contestants don't have to write them all down. And what we tell people is we're only reading and grading the first number. If you write down, because if you think about it, what you would have, if I was to go through and find any that were correct, what you would do is just have your kids write all the numbers down, and then surely the right number's in there somewhere. So we only look at the first number. So if it was, I don't know, I did a lot of staging of photos a long time ago with my kitchen, and if you've got a good working relationship with your school kitchen, it's a great place to start. There's other pictures that I've found over the years on the internet. They're hard to find because companies don't want this out there. So they're hard to find, but if you go through here and talk about it, there are 5 years worth of pictures. Go through and talk about it. Look and see that there are things like facilities food. So that's a food contact surface. Facilities non-food, those would be non-contact surfaces. Then there's food product. And then there's employee train, and that's their training thing. So if it was a hairnet or beard net, you would mark number 41. Number 42 is going to have to do with employees must not touch ready-to-eat foods with their bare hands. And so if you had a picture where somebody was turning a pork carcass with a bare hand, well, that's a food violation, and you would mark yes on the card. That's a violation, and then you would mark number 42. You're supposed to wear gloves all the time. If you saw a person with a Band-Aid on their hand without it being covered up with a glove, well, that would be a violation. That would be a number 45. So you can go through here and talk about a lot of things. Probably the hard ones are, do I see mold on something? Well, there's places where mold is not a safety issue. Mold on bread is not a safety issue. That green mold that you see, it's not going to make you sick. You don't want to eat it, but it isn't going to make you sick. And it's kind of naturally there. Mold on a cheese, not going to make you sick. That's probably not a problem. Mold in a drink, that probably is a safety issue that you're going to want to call safety. And then probably number 38, adulterated food items. It's not a food item that can be utilized. So all of these on here, fairly self-explanatory, but I'm always willing to answer emails about how to interpret certain things because there is some interpretation on some of them. Make sure that things like number 34 and number 37. Number 34 says refrigerated potentially hazardous foods shall be transported and received at 41 degrees. So this is all about trucking and getting it off. Number 37 is potentially hazardous foods shall be maintained. That's the storage. So if we were to show a picture, and I think there was a picture of like a hamburger and they put a thermometer in there and the hamburger was at 60 degrees or 58 degrees or whatever the temperature was, it's above that 41 degree mark. And so that's a 37. That's not a 34. 34 would be hard to do. You'd have to plainly see that it was on a truck the temperature being measured. So yeah, I guess the big things there, we see a lot of good scores on this, but read that list regularly with your kids or with your contestants so that they know what's coming up. Sometimes they forget about number 3, that you're only allowed to use government approved and properly labeled chemicals. That if you can't have a squirt bottle that's not labeled. They sometimes will forget about number 1 also, which is if you see insect parts or rodent, rat droppings or mouse droppings, that kind of thing, that needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, and I do want to say on this, just teachers, if you've never dealt with this CDE before, this is the only portion that's not on the Scantron. So this is actually done on a worksheet. So if you're practicing and you're stressed out, you can't figure out where this goes on the Scantron, just know that it doesn't, that there's a separate worksheet for that. And that worksheet is on our website. It is, I believe, this file right here. Yeah. Yep. So it just is photo 1 through 10. And then if there's no violation, just the student would check no and then move on. But if there is, then list the number that best applies. And then Mr. Shimmels explains how he graded that.
So you get 2 points for the yes or no and 3 points for the number. is what it comes down to. But if it's a no, you get all 5 points. If it's a no and you mark no, you get 5 points.
Just kind of looking at 2018, it shows the safety list, but it also has the these are the ones that were used in that year's contest. So you'll be able to go through this on all the years. And practice. We'll look at 2021. He's got a file for that. These are the safety picks. And so it depicts a lot of different situations.
And like that picture there, that number 4 picture, there's a lot going on there that's grody. There's probably 5, I don't know what the answer says. There might be 4 or 5 numbers there that would be acceptable. And your kids get full credit for any one of those 4 or 5 numbers. But if you look at the one above it, the only number that's going to be acceptable on number 3 is safety violation 1. That's the only one that's available. So I'm glad to see those back to back. Number 3, the only number that's going to be acceptable is 1, but number 4, there's a bunch that will be acceptable in there. So tell them to. The other thing is, one thing I find training teams is that sometimes we do this exact exercise in Nebraska, and I had a senior boy this year that, my goodness, he overthought that list way too much. I try to interpret it as plainly as possible. So anyway.
Yeah. So and then of course these are pretty well like ready-made practices that you can use, because he's provided the key that he used for each one of these contests. So very valuable resource that Mr. Schemmels has shared with us to be able to use. And we have about a month until the CDE. So if you've been searching for some material to use for some practices, this is definitely one of the best resources that you'll find. It's just the past years of practicums. I guess let's talk briefly about the written exam. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Mr. Schemmels, just offer some advice of how to help teachers train their teams on written exam. We already talked about which chapters we'd use this year. It's chapters 1 through 12.
So I'm gonna say, and I don't think it's a big secret, Mr. Babers, if I said that half the questions come out of the glossary, would you be shocked at that?
No, I would agree with that.
I'm about half the questions are gonna come out straight out of the glossary. And I do not believe in trying to trick kids. So this test is harder than blue blazes. I mean, it's hard. The most successful teams will be the teams that spend the most time on the test materials. I tell my teams to get into those glossaries. You want to practice on your own time, you want to get better, get in the glossary. If you know the glossary words, because even sometimes, even if the question isn't a key term out of the glossary, if you understand those key terms, a lot of times you can work your way through it. Also tell them not to try to psychoanalyze the test. Just take the test. Don't try to, well, I've got too many A's in a row, or I've got too many B's. Just take the test. Oh, I don't have enough C's. C is the most popular. Well, I know C is the most popular. So there's a lot of tests that I write where C is not the most popular. So I want to know what you know, not how well you take a test. So go through, do the half of the questions are going to come straight out of the glossary, and they'll be pretty evenly mixed through those 12 chapters, because I think I've told lots of people this. I'll start on 1 or 12. I don't know where I'll start because I haven't started yet. And I'll pick one key term, usually out of each one of those chapters. And I'll go through there, and then I'll go the other direction, pulling questions out of those chapters. I'll go find a question out of each one, and then I'll go, back through and pull key terms. And that, now I'm already at 30 36 questions. And so then I'll come back through and pick a question out of each one of those chapters. And then the last two will probably be key terms. So probably be 26, 27 key terms questions, and 20, 23, 24 questions just out of the reading. I would say to go use, especially the last 2 years, is you can use all of the years as examples of tests that I've written. So you can see what kind of questions we ask and get a feel for how we write them. But every year I go back through usually at the end after we've written the test and just make sure we don't have a lot of same questions, if that makes sense. Usually they're fresh and brand new, so there's not much crossover. And but the key terms and the key to being competitive in this contest is the test. If you can do generally speaking, and I think Mr. Babers would agree with me, generally speaking, if you can handle the test and handle the product development, you got a real shot at winning.
Yeah, and of course those two carry the most point value. Thank you for that insight on the written exam. And I haven't talked much about aromas and triangle testing. I'll give you just a little bit of insight on both, and then if anybody has any questions, you can ask, and I'll share this stuff with y'all after we get off of here. But on aromas, those traditionally in the past have always been in it's like an amber colored bottle. That way you can't really see, can't tell much about the composition of it, but normally it's a liquid. And you could go watch Mr. Schimmel's videos that he made in 2018 that's on our website. He goes through a little more of the process about how to smell those aromas, how to assess them. He also goes into a lot of detail about the triangle test and steps to take whenever you're assessing those samples. You're not just tasting, but you're using all of the senses to be able to evaluate those samples and try to figure out the one that's different. And so the format of the triangle test is for each test, there will be 3 samples. One of those samples is different, and it has a 3-digit identifier, just random 3-digit number. And so the student would put the 3-digit number that corresponded to the sample that was different in that test. And of course, we already talked about what those differences can be. They can be brand differences or formulation differences, reduced fat, reduced sodium, reduced sugar, sugar-free. They can be, Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. And there's really no limit to what kind of food product it can be. I mean, it can be beverages, condiments. We've seen candies before.
And last year we did cranberry juice. It was cranberry juice and then cran grape juice. And you couldn't tell a difference looking at it, but if you smelled it, you could tell a difference. There was a small flavor. I mean, the flavor was different, but it was definitely a smell thing. And I will also tell you that how you do them, what order you do them in. I think last year we had mints, if I'm remembering correctly. Don't put a mint in your mouth till the very end, because you're going to have a hard time, and only put it in there for a short time, because if you put a mint in your mouth and leave it in your mouth and then you move to aromas next, you're not smelling anything. You put that stuff in your mouth, you're not there. I always tell my kids, oh, food science is great because we get to eat. But the real thing is, you're not there to eat. You're there to determine what's different. There will be a trash can for you to spit stuff out in, and it's not offensive for you to do so. In fact, you should do so. But don't linger with it. Make your decisions and move on. The other thing is ag teachers, have fun with this. My wife and I walk up and down the grocery aisles looking for stuff to challenge them. There's all kinds of, take Heinz ketchup versus Hunt's ketchup. The kids won't even have to put it in their mouth. There's a viscosity difference. So you turn the cup on its side, you can see a viscosity difference. Sorry, I was just I remember the cran grape and the cranberry, and it seemed like it was way harder last year, but the kids that got it most were the ones that spent some time smelling it.
Yeah, so I think we've kind of went through everything at this point. Does anybody have any questions about something that we didn't provide enough detail on, or something that was unclear? There was a lot of information. Some things I probably didn't do a very good job on the product development. I wasn't able to show you as much as I wanted to. My apologies for that. So anything that anybody wants to ask before we conclude?
And send an email. I think my email's on the list there. And if you want to send it to Mr. Babers and I both, that's great. But send an email. Happy to answer any questions anytime.
Yeah, guys, and if you've ever gotten an email from me, I mean, my contact information is at the bottom of my email signature field. So a lot of you probably have my number anyways. I'll be glad to answer anything, but I just wanted to provide this time for teachers because I've had a lot of calls about it. I want to try to be as transparent as possible to answer everybody's questions and try to be fair. So thank y'all for joining, taking your time out of your day to come in, and I hope this was helpful. Again, reach out to Mr. Schimmels or myself if you run across anything else. Y'all have a good rest of the month with your banquets, with testing, with finishing up the school year, and with training for Food Science CDE. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir, for doing this. Hopefully I didn't butt